Good morning, Lynsey. As promised, I got up. I think I woke up at 7:42 this morning, so it's okay. Who needs sleep when you feel like this? Um, I promised that I would look at our Sinistry, our composite, and I ended up. By the way, apologies for my looks. I haven't done anything to clean up or get ready for the day yet. Um, Literally came in here and turned on the computer, opened the astrology, and started making charts. Um, so this is all kind of first impression kind of stuff because obviously I haven't had time to study it very long. Um, anyway, I ended up with one, two, three, four different charts, and I'll probably spend most of the time on the composite and then take a look at our bi-wheels where I'll put your natal outside of my natal in a bi-wheel and my natal outside of your natal in a bi-wheel. And then if there's any time, we can look at the transits outside of our composite just to see. Mostly I was curious about Mars, because Mars is the instigator, starts new cycles, starts new things. So anyway, we'll take a look at all those. So this is over here on the left, composite. It's a midpoint chart. So it calculates the midpoints between your natal planets and my natal planets and creates, a separate a separate natal planet. Fuck, I'm not a weak yet. Natal chart with our combined energies, our combined archetypal imprints. And boy, howdy, you were right. It's awesome. Could very well be the most powerful chart I've ever even looked at. You can see already, those two stelliums down in the fourth and fifth. It's all below the line. It's all happening in the realm of our inward world, our inner world. 9 out of the 10 planets down below the line. Only Jupiter up there in the 11th is above the line. So whenever you see a couple of stelliums, especially that close to each other, 4th and 5th, when I do my archetypal analysis and try to figure out what are the dominant archetypes, you end up with a whole bunch of them because Sun and Moon are surrounded by planets. It's crazy. Yeah, there's here, I'll show you. Down there. Look at all those asterisks. Moon is probably, we're a lunar couple. Yeah. Got Cancer rising. We both have that in our natal charts, so that makes sense. Cancer rising makes Moon a ruling archetype, and then Moon in its own house, 4th house, gives it an extra emphasis. Then you got Mercury it's a masculine Mercury in Sag. So I paired it up with paired it up with the communicator archetype, Gemini. But it had, it would also go with the Virgo version. A lot of healing energy there. Venus, and it's the feminine lovers archetype. Go figure. Mars, the warrior. Jupiter, teacher, traveler. We live halfway across the planet from each other. Saturn, the elder leader, our relationship with structure. Uranus, the idealist, and Neptune, the mystic. It's interesting that my arm was getting tired. It's interesting that Scorpio, Dark Mother, doesn't show up. I mean, Venus is in Scorpio down there in the 4th. So it's not like it doesn't show up at all. I mean, in Venus and Scorpio, come on. But in terms of a ruling archetype, and I thought that was actually kind of interesting, because where you and I can have like this overwhelming intensity in other people, for me and you, the Dark Mother is actually comforting. Right there in the 4th house. Venus in Scorpio in the 4th. Moon in Libra in the 4th. Also, with Saturn in Scorpio in the 5th house as kind of like the caboose in the Sagittarius stellium around the sun, that also mitigates the intensity of Scorpio in the chart. The 5th house being the Leo house. Yeah, 5th house being the Leo house. It's got that childlike curiosity. I was talking about how you have that. You said you've never been bored in your life, and that's that quality. Saturn in Scorpio in the 5th, conjunct Sun, is it's more lighthearted, curious. Anyway, so I thought that was interesting. So I'm not going to hold this up the whole time. I'm just going to talk. So these are all first impressions. It's interesting with South Node there in the 8th house in Aquarius. Our combined composite karmic challenge, one of the two, the lunar node version, has to do with how should I say this? In relationship, something you said in a text last night about a healthy relationship supports each person's sovereignty. And that's what shows up here. There is a karmic challenge to preserve our sovereignty as people, as individuals. Freedom. So, I have in my natal chart, in the 7th house of relationship, Saturn in Aquarius, South Node in Aquarius. Yeah. And oh, that's right. I had to do that from memory. And so, like, I have a lifelong challenge, I guess, in the realm of relationship around this very same thing. You know, how can I be in relationship without losing myself, without sacrificing who I really am? It requires, you use the word courage, but it requires a willingness to be honest, to trust that the other person is not going to bail on me if we have a difference of opinion or if we have a different belief. Saturn, beliefs. If we differ in any way, the skillful, healthy way of dealing with it is through finding an ideal way. The way Charles used to say it was both and. Instead of either or, it's both and. So it requires this elevation in consciousness, in relationship, always taking things back up, to this higher perspective so that differences are seen in context rather than as threats, existential threats. So having a South Node in Aquarius in our combined composite chart, up there in the 8th house, the Scorpio house, the Dark Mother, our ability, themes keep resonating from our texts, and I'm not awake yet, so I'm sorry, I'm kind of stumbling along here. I'm remembering something you said about, feeling comfortable, feeling safe. And that when I would bring up, Buddhist concepts, thoughts, insights, when I would use the Buddhist language, to talk about some of the mystical things, some of the spiritual truths, I'm used to using, especially the Theravada version, I'm immersed in that, and it would trigger some of your trauma from those years you spent with your Buddhist boyfriend, Tibetan Buddhist. And here with South Node Aquarius in the 8th house, at the end of the 8th house, there's this suggestion of an ability to navigate the depths from a place of a higher perspective, a spiritual perspective. So that I Ching reading that I did is pretty important. The changing hexagram 25, it talks about the need to stay aligned with God, with spirit, and to make that the priority. And I feel like we naturally, as a composite, we naturally exist in the what Charles used to call the transpersonal realm, the mystic, the idealist, the Dark Mother. it kind of strikes me that this is happening at a perilous time on the planet. And the way that we share our intimacy is through this higher spiritual connection. You know, in my form of Buddhism, it's jhana, samadhi, you know, prana, chi. We're exchanging the kundalini energy as a way of connecting in a very intimate way, you know, that is beyond space, beyond distance. The world needs that, you know. So if we're going to be like bliss bunnies meeting up on the cushion, there's a side benefit for all humans, all beings. And I'm sure I've discussed this with you down through the years since 2009. Man, sometime I'm going to tell you about that year. That when I was a little boy, I would look forward to the time that I'm living in now, which seemed like a million years then. You know, this is around the time I was molested. I was seeing Jesus, you know, would come visit me and pass on all this inner knowledge, you know, straight into my unconscious. And I knew that there would come this time of transformation where I'm getting way into the weeds now, but where many, many people are suddenly not in their body reference. And I, you know, part of that I understood as, you know, actual death. But I also understood it as this collective raised consciousness vibration that is disorienting to people. It displaces them from their comfort zone or from their normal way of filtering reality. And somehow when I look at this South Node in Aquarius in the 8th in our combined chart, Composite, I feel like our way of being intimate with each other is going to form a bridge without us even knowing it, a bridge for people. Maybe we'll come to know it at some point. But we need a lot of people on this planet doing this kind of sharing. You know, ultimately it's love. Oh my God, if I go this slow, I'll be here forever. Where are we? We're already 19 minutes in, so Mike, kick it in. You can call me Mike if you want. My close people do. No, some do, some don't. Who knows? Whatever you feel like. The other karmic challenge is the rising sign, so Cancer. And that's really interesting because it's such a contrast to the theme of the idealist up there in South Node, Aquarius. Cancer, the nourishing mother, is almost, if Aquarius, the idealist, is all about personal sovereignty and being supported in connecting to the network, in participating on a big stage, finding a place in the world, you know, finding an ideal application for, you know, connecting in a spiritual way with the world and the people in it. That's Aquarius. Cancer, the nourishing mother, has lessons around self-nourishment. Self-nourishment. And culturally, we are conditioned as nourishing mother types to comfort others, nourish others, to devote ourselves to others. And of course, this gets out of balance and it becomes a lesson in codependency, which is the opposite of freedom and sovereignty. So we have Cancer rising. There is a lesson there, together and as individuals, because we both have it in our natal, to never abandon ourselves, our own needs and desires. If we're going to nourish the other person, it needs to be in support of the other person's ability to have boundaries that guarantee their own nourishment, that preserve their needs, desires, values, and principles. I'm feeling all the butterflies and the sun in the chest. All right, there's too many archetypes. It's virtually all the archetypes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the 12 archetypes. So it's 2/3 of the archetypes are present in our composite chart. It's, we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. I hope we do. But I just want to go with first impressions. And the first impression was noticing it. All the planets are below the line except for Jupiter up there in the 11th house. So there is this, we meet in that safe inner place. It's shy. It's introverted. It's concerned with the interior world. So we're pretty raw. If we're, it's like we have this desire to open in those tender, wounded places, previously wounded. We have a desire to share that with each other, to find that we're not alone in the pain and suffering that shaped who we are. It's so sweet, looking at that. All those planets in the 4th house, the mama house, the grandma house. Oh, grandma, please make me some cookies. Please fix my socks. So safe. So okay. And I know, in our individual lives, our actual mothers were less than perfect, being diplomatic there. So I'm talking about this from the ideal perspective. Yeah. 5 planets. They're in the fourth. 4 planets in the fifth. House of Leo. The golden child. So yeah, one of my first thoughts was, oh my God, how powerful to have 2 stelliums like that. Really, really strong, really focused, combined archetypal energy. But in an area of the chart that is safe. That second, third, fourth, fifth, it's like home. The safety of a healthy home. So I thought of that. Sun is conjunct Neptune. Moon is conjunct Uranus. So yeah, I was talking. I think I mentioned earlier that we inhabit the transpersonal realms. The having Uranus and Neptune conjunct our luminary planets is just another affirmation, another reminder of the importance of keeping it on that higher level. When we feel ourselves getting bogged down in mundane life, helping each other to get reestablished in a higher perspective, get reconnected with the source of our strength and power. We can really be good for each other that way. It kind of feels like together we are holding a really, really potent healing energy that for most people is too intense, overwhelming, can't understand it. And here we are doing it as a form of intimacy, safe intimacy. That's what shows up down there. The Uranus is opposing Jupiter in the 11th house of Uranus, Jupiter in the idealist house. The only planet above the line is opposing Saturn. Yeah, only Saturn down there in the 5th. So that, to me, that's speaking to, the logistical part of this, what's happening, living so far apart. Saturn, the relationship with structure, which means money, finances, empowerment. A truly healthy and creative relationship with structure kind of moves beyond limitations like that. Maybe not instantly, but it's not like this huge big game breaker. So that's kind of interesting. The Jupiter is the teacher traveler, and it shows up. When we look at the bi-wheels. Pour coffee all over me. Hopefully, it'll start loosening up my synapses here. Oh my God. Teacher traveler in the house of the idealist. So expansive Jupiter, elevating Uranus, elevating idealist, expansive teacher traveler, opening realms of potential and possibility that, well, speaking for myself, are not as easily available as an individual. So I think this is saying that in our combined energy, our combined archetypal presence, there's some really creative, there's some creativity around negotiating the structure of the world and turning it into an empowering source of experience and ultimately wisdom. I have no idea how that's going to end up looking. It's going to come up against, speaking for myself, my own limitations, my own beliefs. And again, in the bi-wheels, there's some squares having to do with Saturn that, there's a real challenge inwardly around beliefs. I probably shouldn't talk about it now. I'll wait till I get to that. But this opposition, the way I learned it, oppositions are external challenges. So Saturn and Jupiter are challenging each other out in the world to be more functional, to express both those archetypes, the elder leader, teacher traveler, in a creative and healthy way out in the world, where it counts. That is embedded in our combined archetypal presence. That principle. I think before moving on, I'm just going to look at that Chiron up there in the 10th house, which is the house of career, again, relationship with structure, systems, authority, etc. And Chiron is in Aries. Because Chiron is the wounded healer archetype, at first I looked at this and I had kind of an but I wasn't remembering the myth of Chiron. It stands for injury and loss of the golden age, loss of the good old days, and then a death of our expression of that archetype, Aries. So, Aries on the creative side is all about, who am I? All about a willingness to be decisive, make choices, and to act upon them, to take action in the world, get things done, motivate physically. It's on the creative side. On the shadow side, typically issues of anger, that can turn to violence, that can it's the warrior. Having Chiron in Aries acknowledges that kind of trauma in each of us. I've told you some stories, We each have violence, anger, aggression as part of our wounds, of our trauma. Chiron represents what happens after the rebirth. Chiron, the wounded healer, healer of the gods, was so beloved by the gods that they made him immortal, granted him God status. And what happens? As always, the gods went to war, and an arrow comes in, hits him in the ankle. He can heal everybody else, but he can't heal himself. That's a typical healer wound. The pain sets in, and it becomes so excruciating. He can't live with it. It goes on and on and on. It's like me in the basement. Take me, God. And so he did. He cried out and begged the gods to give him his mortality back so that he could die, so that the pain would dissipate and go away. So they did. And he died. Then he was reborn in another form. And the new form brought out his genius, his gift, in a way that he could not have imagined before. And what happens during that period between the death and the rebirth, and this is how it happens in humans. We come in as kids and we have our gift. Whatever Chiron is, that's our gift. That's our genius that God gave us. And it's easy when we're a little kid. We don't know any better. We're just expressing it. But then the world starts to bang on us. And that trauma starts to accumulate. And sadly, at a certain point, the veil comes down. It happens at a different time for most kids. I think for me, I've thought about this a lot, and I think right around the age of 9, it started to, that innocence, the veil started coming down. And I'd had enough of these, experiences to where it was really more difficult to access that genius. Mine was in in Pisces in my chart. What's yours? Lynsey is the inner wheel. Yours is also Pisces. Ha! Go figure. That was the other thing I was going to say is we are, it's like looking in a true mirror. We have so many things in common on this archetypal level. It's crazy. Oh, okay. So getting back to Chiron. So with Aries as our combined Chiron gift, I'll finish what I was saying. We lose it, the veil comes down, and then we unconsciously spend our life. It's the source of depression for a lot of people because they have, and it's not conscious. This is all happening, down inside. They intuitively remember that golden age of their early youth, however long it lasted, where they had one foot in this world, one foot in the other. That gift was allowed to shine. I mean, God, my heart breaks to think that there are kids who it wasn't allowed to ever shine in any way. There had to be at least a little bit of it. And then the veil comes down and we go into the darkness, the underworld, the realm of the dead, and we are secretly pining after that ability to shine from our gift. You know, life has hidden it. And, you know, I mean, it's still there, but it's not the same. It's not the same. It doesn't flow. And so we spend all these years, it can be, you know, I mean, for me, it was Jesus saying goodbye until the charism started again. 30 solid years. It can be a long time. But then that rebirth happens, and it's suddenly, whatever that archetype is, it's suddenly there, but there's enough self-awareness, there's enough healing, there's enough wisdom from experience that now the expression is more pure than it was during that intervening death time. It's coming through as God intends it, not as we intend it. In other words, we have this preconception based on that early life expression of the gift, of what it looks like and how it's going to be expressed. You know, Aries, athletics in my case, so there's a lot of positive expression, but also, you know, I grew up in biker town, so very rough, a lot of violence, a lot of anger. Now in the rebirth, you know, elevating that consciousness, keep going out of the screen here, there's an opportunity to bring that self-awareness to the gift. And so I see that Chiron that you and I have at the top of the chart in the 10th as an opportunity to bring our vitality into the elder leader realm, the Saturnian 10th house relationship with structure. You know, there is a real willingness to take action, which is really interesting. You know, it'll be interesting to see how that manifests. Okay. I'm going to kick it in. It's 45 minutes here. Michael Lynsey. I think I want to look at this one. No, I want to look at the other one. Michael Lynsey. So this one is how my presence affects your natal chart. How my natal chart affects your natal chart. So you're in the middle, I'm on the outside. So it's like a transit chart, only I am the transits. Then we'll flip it over. If you have to stop the video, you can. I'm the way I was taught, conjunctions are the most important because they bring planets into physical contact. Physical meaning, at the same degree. And then the next three are of secondary importance, but they're still, have their own importance. So squares, trines, oppositions. So I'll start with the conjunctions. And in your chart, I guess we both have a lot of concentration in that fourth and fifth. You have a lot of stuff in the sixth. So you've been doing a lot of healing in this lifetime. I don't know if I have anything. I don't have anything in the sixth. I don't know what's that say. But you have a real concentration in your natal chart that is reflected in our composite chart, where we have all that stuff in the fourth and fifth. And I'm kind of similar. So my two luminaries, sun and moon, are transiting your fourth and fifth. The way that it turns out, am I looking at the right chart? No, I'm not. Damn it. Yeah, I am. Do I have... Why does this look different? Oh, no, it's... Okay, sorry. It's still morning. Okay, so I'm trying to use my cursor here. Down in the fourth house, Uranus and Pluto are conjunct Saturn. Saturn at 13, Uranus at 5. So that's kind of technically out of orb. I use a 7-degree orb, but I drew it anyway. And then Pluto, my Pluto is at 12 degrees Virgo. Your Saturn is at 13, so pretty close. So, we talked about how comfortable we are, how safe it is to be dark mother types and to hang out with that archetypal energy together. Whereas for other people, it quickly becomes overwhelming and too intense. So that shows up here. My dark mother planet is conjunct your elder leader. So in a way, I guess we're speaking honestly. In a way, I think this is something to pay attention to. Don't ignore this. My presence has a shattering, explosive, even destructive influence on the structure of your life initially. It's a tectonic movement. And that can be it's heavy beans. The flip side of that is once the destruction phase is over, there's this kind of glorious rebuilding and rebirth. The phoenix rising from the ashes. And so, from the higher perspective, you're being asked to surrender to that dark mother destroyer who is also a creator. I'll be curious to see what you think on this one. It's pretty intense. I'm bringing to the very structure of your life, a level of, intensity that's pretty pronounced, pretty powerful. Just by virtue of close proximity to the volcano over here. On the flip side, or not on the flip side, but from my perspective, uh, I try to be. You've probably noticed it. Probably to a fault. I try to be sensitive to being too much, and I get it. You've affirmed over and over you like it. You like talking to me. You like spending time with me. All of this stuff where we seem to translate the dark mother energy into something that's comfortable and familiar and like home. That means something, and that I think that would be in an interesting, strange way a source of healing for you. I mean, I'm talking about you right now. I know it is for me too. But we're talking about the elder leader, and so that can't be ignored. It's literal structure. It's your house. It's your town. It's your country. Institutions, structures, systems, things that once they're in place, we take them for granted because that is the milieu. That's our world. Your world. And here comes this quadruple Scorpio. His Pluto in the generational sign of Virgo, parked right on top of your Saturn in Virgo. Granted, it's in the 4th house, so that's good. That's nourishing. Yeah, I'd be curious to get your feedback on this one, because I am concerned with being too much. I can't help it. I can't. I can't. So, moving over here to the 5th house. Neptune, my Venus in Scorpio. Venus in Scorpio. Conjunct your Venus in Scorpio and your Uranus in Scorpio. 5th house. Elder leader, and I mean a golden child. Leo. So yeah, the mystic and the idealist are ruling archetypes in our composite chart. Mystic, meditating into absorption and using that as a form of intimacy. Not a form, a method of intimacy. Our way of being intimate from this infinitely higher perspective. What a gift. What a fucking gift. Out of a lot of gifts that we have. It's Christmas and our bag o' presents is overflowing. Truly. So we together carry these archetypes. Venus, I believe, is also on the list. Yep. The lovers archetypes. So I'm sorry, itchy. My presence combined with your presence is thrives in relationship. Venus, Libran Venus, thrives sexually because it's so safe, thrives ideally because it's coming from a higher perspective and higher octave and higher vibration, and it thrives in the mystical realm. When we attune to each other, it's real. It's like we're in the same room together, no matter how far apart we are. So that's all happening in that conjunction, that set of conjunctions. Kind of speeding through this, you know. I want to send the video to you. We got a sun conjunction there in the 5th. Interestingly, you know, mine is in Scorpio, yours is in Sag, but they're within 7 degrees. And I mean, I use a 15-degree orb for the luminaries anyway, but it's within 7. So they're 6 degrees apart. Also, Mercury, my Mercury, is 8 degrees. So within that 15-degree orb. So I'm bringing more of this dark mother who, you know, that's part of my shame in life. Is I just feel like I'm too much for everybody. You know, Maurice, my other astrology teacher, he read my chart one time, and he, since we're being honest, he pointed out a wound, a profound wound that I have, which is I am impelled to bring all of me to the other person. Whether usually it's in a reading, but if it's sitting at a bar or sitting in a restaurant, sitting on a couch in a living room, sitting at the kitchen table with another person, I'm impelled to connect in a real, genuine way, like we've known each other forever. And then I'll notice it's like I have this awareness that it's too big. My light is shining too bright. So I withdraw. And for the other person, it's worse than being bombarded with all that dark mother energy. It's far worse. He was here, now he's gone. So Scorpio, Mercury, Scorpio, Sun on top of your Sun in Sagittarius. You being a lunar Scorpio, having tons of dark mother energy in your own chart. And I'm discovering this person who doesn't seem to get overwhelmed. I mean, maybe the jury's still out on that one. I don't know. But God, what a miracle that would be to find somebody on this planet who is designed to meet me in this way. And I feel like it kind of shows up right there. I'll also be honest, my first love of my life, and then the next two girlfriends I had, actually my first wife, and then my next girlfriend. So the first three major relationships in my life up until my Saturn return. Exactly. See how all this works? They were all Sagittarians, and my progressed sun was working through Sagittarius during that period. Almost from like a year after I was born, my progressed sun went into Sag, and it lasted my entire Saturn return. Because 30 degrees, 28 degrees, it fit perfectly because my sun is at the very end of Scorpio, 29 degrees. And this crazy woman up in Chicago, Jenny, Sagittarius. And like, I haven't been picking up on this with you, which is another reason I'm a little bit freaked out, because you don't seem to carry this trait. But those relationships, Aaron, my first one, didn't really express it in a hurtful way. But there's something about Sagittarius, I'm sure I've told you this before. It knows what it knows, and nobody's going to tell them any different. And so I'll get this feeling sometimes, like with Jenny up in Chicago, who tells me I'm the love of her life and then turns out to be batshit crazy. That's mean. She has a lot of very significant wounds, a lot of trauma from her relationship, from her upbringing. I want to be kind to her. So I'm sorry for being flippant around this, because it is mean. It's not nice. I don't want to be that way. That's not cool. But her sun in Sag, she latches on to her perspective, the way she understands things, the world. And it's like a locked box. And so having a discussion with her around anything that diverges from her perspective, it's like coming up against a brick wall for me. And it quickly becomes like, a lost cause. So it's extreme for her. Erin had that also, but she was more laid back. She's more California, more cool. And her way of kind of repelling alternative perspectives was kind of sneaky, kind of, she used humor to disengage, to kind of divert everything into a more comfortable area. So it wasn't confrontative. My first wife, Dorothy, who I was married to for 4.5 years in the second half of the 80s, was just like like a frightened bunny rabbit, cornered, cornered by a house cat. Poor thing. Sometime I'll talk to you about her, but she was just too frightened to affirm what she knew, and that produced, you know, some projections later in our relationship, that were unworkable for me. I I have some healing to do around that one. That culminated right at my Saturn return when I moved to Boulder. And then my first girlfriend here in Boulder was a woman who, when we were kids, we went to the same church in Fresno. And she was a Sag. She had a lot of mystic energy. And she was going to the University of Colorado working on her third master's degree. Teacher, traveler. She was teaching. But her true interest was in, metaphysics. So, like, her best friend was a clear channel. She taught me about candle magic and, got me going learning tarot and astrology. Things like that. She also introduced me to a few other things that I now regret. But her way of being stubborn around what she knows was similar to Aaron, just kind of laughing off any countering perspectives. Any. Just not even worth looking at. And because of her personality, it's easy to let it go. But I always felt invalidated, with all four of them. It felt like, you're not hearing me. I don't count. My perspective is literally beside the point. And man, I do not get that from you. I don't get that from you. Not yet. I want to hear what you have to say about this, but your Sagittarianness feels more like the golden child. And, this is in the 5th house, the Leo house. But your way of being with your body of knowledge, what you know, feels childlike to me. You don't feel heavily invested, so heavily invested in your perspective that you are stubbornly blocking out everything else. You don't feel that way. You feel, to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, you feel to me like that curious kid who wants to learn more. Like you're an open student, which means you're an open teacher. If you were to get in front of a class, you would be learning as much or more from your students than you're teaching them. It really feels that way to me. Such a breath of fresh air. I mentioned square. So Saturn up here, I'm keep moving. Saturn in the so my 8th house Saturn. Well, it's not really. Mine is in the 7th, but my Saturn and South Node are squaring your Moon and Venus in Scorpio down here in the 5th, while opposing your Jupiter in Leo. So I was saying that, squares are internal challenges, oppositions are external challenges. So we've already looked at that we have Saturn opposite Jupiter in our combined chart, in our composite synastry chart. So that's happening again here, where my Saturnian influence on you focuses on your Jupiter. So this is like an external challenge around the distance between us on the globe. It's also a challenge around, and I'm doing a reading here, so I'm getting way ahead. I understand that I'm talking about things that aren't even in the picture yet, may never be in the picture, who knows? So I'm not trying to put pressure on or anything like that. I'm just, it's what's showing up in the chart. So theoretically, say things really did progress to that serious a place. How do we deal with that separation? That shows up right here. And I think I'm just going to leave it at that. It's a feature of our relationship that one way or another, at some point along the way, needs to be navigated, needs to be decisions and choices need to be made around it. It shows up right there. The squares, your Scorpio moon and Venus, that's that you mentioned, you have a lot of sexual energy in your text last night. And I think for you, well, I know for you, it's a combination of the nourishing mother, fourth house, and the dark mother. It's all the water, but nourishing mother, dark mother. So sexual contact, touch, while it must be meaningful, it must have meaning, dark mother, it also has to be nourishing. It has to be a source of nourishment for you. Saturn squaring, my Saturn squaring, is turning a light on to your beliefs around who you are in that feelingful, emotional place, intimate place. It's challenging you around your wounds, really. That you're carrying forward from previous relationships. That tendency to bolt, sabotage, run away. Because it's bringing up sexual wounds. It's bringing up intimacy, ruptures, abandonment. And I'm going to be triggering that for you. I am triggering that for you. It's disorienting. And this Saturn square moon and Venus in the fourth house in Scorpio is it's just asking you to review, to be open, within yourself, to bring self-awareness to all of that. I'm sure you already are. It's kind of scary. It's kind of if there's a theme for us, it's vulnerability. A willingness to be raw and open to talk about the hard things, to share. And that all comes into play with this Saturn square. So if we flip it around, how we doing? Hour and 15 minutes. It's a full reading. I didn't think I'd go this long. I'm just going to pull up my version where you are on the outside and I'm on the inside. And I'm going to leave the transits, I'll email all 4 charts and you can look at it and tell me what you think. But I'm just going to talk about this one. So you're on this is how you affect me. And you affect me. There's a lot more going on in this chart than the other way. So you're having quite the influence on me. What is wrong with my mug? I'm starting to wake up. Okay. Okay, well, I'm going to start with the conjunctions. Your Saturn is on my Scorpio. That makes sense because my Scorpio is on your Saturn. You can already see the reciprocity here between the 2 charts. So where I was like a emotional wrecking ball for the structure of your life, you are a structural wrecking ball for my emotional life. I'll just say it. That sounds harsh, but I think of everything in terms of cycles. And I've been going through this. I'm almost 2 years into my separation from Karen, and I'm many years let's just say that I'm of the 2 of us, I'm closer in immediacy to the onset of my PTSD. I think it's not a competition. I mean, I just think that you have been under the influences of PTSD longer than I have. That's a very general way of saying it. I mean, in a way, we probably both go really way back before relationships is when it first started. But I'm thinking, like, for myself, that one scene I told you about with Karen's best friend showing up with her new boyfriend, and Karen was tearing me down, and it was like the worst day of my life. That was 2000. That was late in 2007, and the PTSD started right then. The true, like, wake me up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, unsure if I want to live or not. It started right then, and it got worse and worse and worse, and then I walled off emotionally, eventually stopped being intimate with her, stopped sleeping in the same room, and I'm still trying to grow spiritually through all of that. I was utterly ashamed. I cut myself off from everyone. And then finally, April 8th, a couple years ago, I left. I got out. almost a couple years, not quite. So, your Saturn on top of my Pluto. My Pluto in Virgo, that's my healing place. It's the wounded healer's journey. And you're catching me at this time where I am vulnerable. And I'm having to employ a lot of self-awareness. I have to recognize, what's my responsibility for my wounds, for my trauma? How did I contribute? What are the dynamics? You saw it all in my the question I asked the oracle. What are my behaviors? What are my patterns? How can I do that differently? I'm right there. And your Saturn is truth. It represents the truth, the unadorned, honest, unbiased truth. So on that level, you represent to that part of my being that is so shredded up. Not just from Karen, but from all my relationships, going back to my mom. The conditioning that went into how I relate. You represent the cold, hard truth. The undeniable truth. You can't hide from it. Can't pretend it's not there. I was thinking last night how important it is in a healthy relationship to set out boundaries. Not like separation boundaries, but declarations of intention. I mean, it's a living document, document. It's a living intention, set of intentions. It changes over time, but get used to, I'm just talking out loud, in a healthy relationship, to get used to right from the outset of being really clear around the truth of the matter. Michael. I am also understanding that my habit of falling in love just when I'm at a point of independence in my life constitutes a long pattern. Truth. And there is a sense within me that I am doing it again, thereby sacrificing my sovereignty in order to divert myself into habitual, dysfunctional relationship dynamics. The masochist in me seems to be coming out. So, your Saturn on my Pluto is demanding that level of truth and honesty. Cold, hard honesty. Then we know what we're dealing with. Gives you some ideas how to be with me, how to support me in doing it better, finding a better way. And it kind of forces me to not lose sight of those wounds, of that wounded way of being. To not lose sight of my intention to not be a source of pain and suffering to you or anybody else. And we're back to that, what's the answer the oracle gives? Keep coming back to the higher perspective. Hang out there. So anyway, that's all happening in that, for me, when I look at it, in that conjunction. Your Venus and Uranus are on top of my Venus, and Neptune, that's a reciprocity also, in the fourth house. So again, three of our strong suits, strong archetypes are the idealist, the mystic, and the lovers. And this for both of us is a real. It would be a really good cornerstone to build on, because this is we carry this really strongly. This is our bond right here. The mystic, the idealist taking it to a higher level, the mystic connecting at that inner magical mystical place, developing there, and the lovers, committed relationship, facing up to our own dynamics, talking about them, making it safe to have it be right out in the open, pushing through our insecurities over and over and over and over again, allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. And then our sun conjunct. Another thing to build around. To me, when I looked at that at first, the sun, I hope my cursor is working here. Now I got 3 of them. Usually I only have 2 from my perspective on this stupid software. Sun conjunct. To me, when I looked at this, I was like, well, this is that uncanny sense I have of looking at myself when I look at you, when I'm present with you. It's part of why it feels safe enough to take the risk of opening up to you. I can't hide from you. I don't want to hide from you. Because you feel like another me. And that's going on right there. There's that your Jupiter is opposing my Saturn, so we've talked about that quite a bit. That's the logistical navigating the real world. Your influence is one of encouraging me to expand my horizons, my range of experience. I'm sure we'll come back to that one. And then there's a couple of squares. Your sun squares my Jupiter up here, my Jupiter in the 8th house. Actually, Jupiter in Chiron. And there's your sun out here, 5 degrees, 5 degrees, yeah. I'm not going to go through all of these. This will be the last one. I think this one is saying that in a way you're a teacher for me. You are a teacher for me around my experience of the mystic. My Jupiter is in Pisces in the 8th house. And, I talked about Chiron, because Chiron is that wound where my relationship with the mystic, when the veil came down when I was a kid, and Jesus was kind enough to leave me a mantra so that I could feel the Kundalini a little bit at least for 15 years or something until it finally faded. But it wasn't until after my Saturn return, around the age of 33, 34, where all of this, the stuff you've been feeling, bursting your heart the last few days, or last night, maybe longer, it came alive. But I have all this religious conditioning that has made it difficult to fully embrace myself as the contemplative, as the mystic. And I feel like this sun square my Jupiter in Pisces, your sun in Sag, you're helping me already, and you will continue to help me to ground the truth of my mystical gifts in reality, making it something I can't deny. So you're literally changing my beliefs. You're helping me to cut through that conditioning. You've already done it. I mean, you've been doing it for years, but you're really doing it now. Okay, so we're hour and a half. I'm gonna process this video, upload it, and send you a download link, and then I'm gonna have some breakfast. It's all I can do to not just gush right now, say all kinds of flowery things. I think I'm just gonna end with, this means a lot to me. It means the world to me. I can't thank God enough for you either. One of my intentions is to stay open with you. Stay vulnerable. Stay in a place of willingness to expose these parts of my being more and more. I want it so desperately. I want to know that there's somebody in the world that I can be like that with. The chart says maybe it can happen. It's a strong chart. I have a feeling I'll be talking to you soon. I want to hear your voice, among other things.